Hello everyone, thank you so much for tuning in for yet another digital art lesson. My name is Benjamin Dumas and I am one of the art teachers at Clarendon Elementary. This week I'm very excited to talk with you all about a couple different things. We're definitely going to be talking about perspective. That's going to be our main topic for today. And then we'll also talk about some different perspectives, such as bird's eye view and worm's eye view. So these are some fun things that we're going to get into in just a minute. But first, let's talk about what we need for today's lesson. All right, so if you have room left in those bright red sketchbooks, you can go ahead and use your sketchbooks for today. If not, any old paper for today's lesson would do just fine. You're definitely going to need your pencils to sketch out your landscapes or your ideas first. Then you can use whatever you would like to add color, whether that be colored pencils or crayons or markers. And the other material that we're going to need for today is a ruler. A ruler is going to come in handy for today's lesson on perspective. It's going to help us with our landscapes. So if you have a ruler, you can use a ruler. If not, you can get creative and use anything that's straight and flat and sturdy for a straight edge. Okay? All right, let's talk about perspective a little bit before we get started on our own landscapes. And when it comes to creating and designing our own, we might be able to use some of these things that we learn in our own drawings today. So perspective, if we were to look up perspective in a dictionary, one of the definitions would be, the art definition, would be a method of creating the illusion of depth by means of converging lines. Now, if you're anything like I was when I was younger, the dictionary definitions for me were sometimes like wah, 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 right? What does it actually mean? I like to see things. It helps me learn. So what perspective means is by using these converging lines, and let me show you an example of converging lines. So you all may have drawn a house like this before, and you do a little house on the side and your tree and your horizon line, which is actually, this is a very important line in landscape art. Also, at some point you may have realized that you could do angled lines, also known as converging lines. They will meet at some point, they will intersect. And those angled lines is what gave your artwork a foreground and a middle ground, and then all the way in the background, which is where your house and your birds and your things are. So you've created depth and illusion, right? It's not actually there because we've learned in some of the other assignments we've done, paper is flat. There's actually doesn't have any depth to it. So how do you create the illusion of depth? Well, you do it by means of converging lines. So the reason that our paper has depth in this example is because the lines I drew are angled. So we're going to learn how we can take those angled lines to create different perspectives, right? How do we create a perspective of buildings as if we are standing on the sidewalk and looking up at them? Those are some different perspectives that we're going to learn about. But I really wanted to say, before we get started on those different perspectives, is this is also very important when you're talking about and dealing with perspective, is that things that are closer to you appear larger and bigger than things that are way in the distance in the background, right? Let me show you. So we all know that avocados, they're pretty average in size. They don't grow the size of someone's head. But I can make this avocado magically appear as if it is growing and talking to you by doing what? By moving it closer to the camera, which is moving it closer to you all. And that is why it appears to be gigantic, right? And bigger than my head. Now what happens if I put it way in the background? It gets smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller until it would vanish way in the background. So let's now use what we've learned about perspective to talk about a couple different perspectives that you may have seen before. One of those is a bird's eye view, and that is an elevated view of an object from above. So anytime you're above something looking down, like if you were a bird flying through a forest, looking down at a road, and there's a little car driving on that road as well, this is the way that you would see it. Or if you were staring out of your window down at your street. Or even if you're staring down at your shoes when you're standing up. Those are all different examples of bird's eye view. Now the opposite of that is a worm's eye view. And this is a view as seen from below. And this can be used to make something seem very powerful or strong. Like this mushroom, how it takes up the entire photograph, right? Because the person who took the photograph got underneath from a worm's eye view. So today we are going to be using what we've learned about perspective. We're going to be trying out a worm's eye view of some very fun skyscrapers to show as if we are standing on the sidewalk downtown somewhere in a very busy city and looking up to see those huge skyscrapers in the sky. So let's get started on our art for today. Okay, so the first thing that we are going to do is we're going to put a little dot somewhere in the middle of our paper. You can do it really light in pencil. I suggest that you do these lines that we're going to do right now in pencil, and then you can outline them later. So that dot is actually very important. It has a name. It's called the vanishing point. And all of our lines are going to lead back to that dot. I'm just going to put two little slash marks or lines on my paper. And I'm going to show us how we can take our ruler and connect those lines with that very important dot, right? That vanishing point. So I'm going to take my ruler and I'm going to connect the dots to the vanishing point with the line. I'm also going to do it over here on the other mark that we made. And you can already see it looks like, because I have converging lines, it looks like we're down looking up at something getting smaller. Let me outline it in Sharpie so that you all can see better, and I can also make it look more rectangular, like a building. So I can then put my line going like this across the top to make it resemble a building, right? And we are looking below. The windows down here closest to us would be much larger than the windows that would be way up at the top of the building, right? Where these birds would be flying around in the sky. Now you can put your windows in freehand. You can also use a ruler to put your windows in. I can show us a quick way how to do that really quickly. I'm going to use two lines above top here just to show you. I'm going to then take my line, the ends of my lines, and I'm going to connect them with my vanishing point. I'm going to draw down. I'll connect my next line. So you can see I'm just moving, keeping my ruler on my vanishing point, and just moving along. And we just created windows. And I'm doing this with a ruler. You do not have to do it with a ruler. You could put them in by freehand if you'd like to. Just draw all your windows. They would get smaller as they go up into the sky. So as you go down your building towards the sidewalk, where the sidewalk would be, make them bigger. Make your windows bigger. So this is one building that we have in our skyline. You can go ahead and put more lines and then go ahead and connect those lines to your vanishing point to make more buildings. Right? And you can do different size buildings. They don't have to all be rectangles too. You can do different shapes, different size windows or different shaped windows to make it look more realistic too. You can also put people flying through your skyline, or Godzilla or King Kong in your skyline, or clouds that are funny shaped. There's so many different things, creative things that you can do after we learn the basics of perspective, right? So this is a worm's eye view. And now let's take a quick look at what it would look like if we did a very quick and simple drawing on perspective. Now this, we'll do a little recap. This line, it does not have to be perfectly straight, is called our horizon line. It's very important. Horizon line. This little dot that we did in our drawing here is the same thing. It's called the vanishing point. And if we were doing a landscape, say we're doing a desert landscape, you would do converging lines to create your desert road. Right? It would be going like this. Then you would have your lines going back into the distance. You could have your mountains way back into the distance, maybe a sun setting. And guess what? Those cacti in the front would be really big, right, in the desert. And they would be in great detail, right? You'd be able to see all those little spikes of those cactus that are in the foreground because they would be very close to you. Now, what about the cacti way in the back? Would you be able to see all the details and spikes of those? No, not as much. And if they were way, way, way in the background, they might just look like this, like a tiny little shadow. And this is how you make your landscapes look more three-dimensional, give them more perspective, and how you make them look more realistic. All right, everyone. Well, I hope you all had fun learning about perspective with me. I can't wait to see some of the artwork from today. And remember, it doesn't have to be a building that we are doing a worm's eye view. It can be other objects like giant trees found in nature, anything that you would like now that you learned the fundamentals of perspective. All right. I can't wait to see some of your artwork, and I look forward to seeing you all next time.